Week 1 was telling in the ACC, and you tell me if this is a knee-jerk reaction. Florida State and Miami are on a collision course for the ACC championship game.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers, and thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive lineman and co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno, host of Locked On Canes, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Now, Kenton, remember like 21 years ago when Miami joined the ACC, everybody thought, oh, Miami versus Florida State in the ACC championship game every year. Might be the year we finally get it. Florida State pulled off one of the bigger upsets of the weekend. Doesn't feel like an upset after actually watching the game, but the Seminoles were 13.5-point underdogs at home against the number 8 Alabama Crimson Tide. And I can't imagine how bad of a weekend Paul Feinbaum had, but Florida State ran wild. Thomas Castellanos backed up every bit of offseason trash talk. That's probably the lead story here. You owe him an apology. I owe him a huge apology for the way we talked about Castellanos for the past couple months. So before we get to Miami upsetting number 6 Notre Dame, let's talk, Kenton, about Thomas Castellanos, who runs for 78 yards and a touchdown against Alabama, throws for 152 yards, no interceptions. He took care of the football. Florida State made Alabama look like Northern Alabama. Like, I don't know where I'm going with that, but that did not look like Nick Saban's Crimson Tide.
You know, they're saying that the Nick Can't Save Them shirts are going to be sold soon through Tommy Castellanos's NIL deal there, because that's, oh my God, boy was he a prophet, boy was he right. But moreover than anything else, one thing that I want to emphasize, if nobody else is paying attention to this was a thorough decimation of Alabama on multiple levels. Yeah. Every single thing that Alabama is known for and has done well for quite some time, they took away from them. Least rushing yards they've had in an opening game since 1975. Donno wasn't even alive back then. Wasn't even a gleam in his pop's or mom's eye back then. Neither was I. Both of us are bald. No hair follicles active up there. Okay? And that's how long it's been since somebody did this to the Tide. Offensive line. They're supposed to have one of the best offensive line units in America. Oh, Caden Proctor and company. Oh, yeah, they're going to maul them. They're going to bowl all over them. Proctor gave up 6 pressures and a sack. In the words of Will Campbell, if you give up 1 sack every week, you'll be working at Amazon. No disrespect to the guys at Amazon. No disrespect to them. But you'll be working there, okay? This was a thorough domination. And you're right. We do owe Tommy an apology. And I said I hoped all along that Tommy proved us right. Proved us wrong, rather. I hope that Tommy, I had never hoped to be wrong about a game more than this one. I never hoped, hey, I hope this team pulls out a W here more than this one. But more power to him. More power to Castellanos. More power to Norvell and company. Maybe desperation is the key. Maybe I need to shoot more shots in Megan Thee Stallion's DM, apparently. Desperation is in, baby.
I mean, in Alabama, Kalen DeBoer is like 2, maybe 3 losses away from legitimately getting fired. Because no matter how big your buyout is, if he were to go 8-4 in Tuscaloosa, just 2 years removed from the Nick Saban era and that dynasty, you're not going to make it. And, there's rumors out there about like supposedly Alabama players are like ordering pizzas to the team hotel at 2 a.m. and bringing their girlfriends up. Like, no discipline whatsoever, they say. But here's the thing, like, I guess the bigger national story when I reference Paul Feinbaum and stuff is like what happened with Alabama. Especially here on Locked On ACC, I think we should give Florida State credit because, okay, even if this may not be the Crimson Tide of 3, 4, 5 years ago, we're talking about a Florida State Seminole team that was 2-10 last year and, wouldn't be able to beat South Alabama, Alabama A&M, let alone the Alabama Crimson Tide. The way this team has been transformed with two new coordinators on both sides who called a great game on both sides, Coach White on defense and Gus Malzahn, who knows a thing or two about beating Alabama on that offensive side. And, Castellanos seems like, and we should know this, he recruited him out of high school after all. His offense is a perfect fit for Tommy Castellanos, unlike the Bill O'Brien offense of last year. And just to think, how far this Florida State team has come in a matter of, 8 months since we last saw them play, it is remarkable. And no matter how the rest of their season goes, and I expect it to go pretty good based on what we saw on Saturday, but no matter how the rest of their season goes, we need to give kudos to Mike Norvell and company for really changing the mentality of that team from one year to the next.
Absolutely. And let's take it a step further. Again, this was not a game that Florida State won with finesse and fancy free football. This was not a game that they won by saying, you know what, Alabama, we're going to spread them out and we're going to make their linebackers have to cover because they always got linebackers that can thump, but they can't cover with. No, they said, hey, we're going to line up and we're going to have us an old school football game here today. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of cute formations. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of motions and all that. But you know what you're going to see more than that? You're going to see offensive linemen coming downhill, putting hands on your boys. What you going to do about it? And they were extremely successful. Do you know how many yards Thomas Castellanos passed for?
I know it wasn't a lot, 130, 140.
Yeah, it was a mighty 152. That's my point exactly, right? Ty Simpson outgained him through the air by over 100 yards. This was a game where Florida State said, hey, we're going to punch you in the face again and again and again and again. And guess what's going to happen after that fifth punch, Donno? Another one's coming. And can you stop it? And Bama said, no, we're good. By the middle of the third quarter, that defense hit the Roberto Duran. No mas. Yeah. Get me out of here. Throw the towel in. Embarrassing showing by Alabama. But like you said, credit to a Florida State team that won 2 games last year, and they couldn't out-physical a paper bag last year. I mean, they would have struggled ripping that thing every way to Sunday. And this year, they were bullying the Crimson Tide to start it off. They got to get their love for this one. Regardless of who was having their girlfriends in or who was partying or last night. Don't matter. You had a single digit by your name, and you didn't show up.
All right, so you reacted a certain way when I said at the top that Florida State and Miami are on a collision course for the ACC championships. All right, so let me ask you, are you buying the Seminoles as ACC championship contenders after that win over Alabama? Are you buying them as ACC contenders or, you still need to see more?
I will give the same answer I gave for Georgia Tech last year after they upset Florida State. It's still too early. I still got to see more. I got to see more. If they continue to do this and Alabama proves like, hey, we're not just a bunch of fluff and 5 stars. We are taking this thing seriously and we are still a good team. We just can't figure this out for whatever reason. I can respect it. If they continue punching teams in the mouth and Thomas Castellanos continues to spearhead a rushing attack that is vicious, I could give them that type of accolade. But right now, we've got a sample size of 1 game. Not sure.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you later in the show how you're feeling about Clemson, if your opinion has changed after, to me, a pretty unimpressive showing against LSU. And it's funny because Miami was an underdog against Notre Dame. They win at home. Florida State, big underdog against Bama. They win at home. Clemson, a favorite against LSU. They lose at home. We'll talk about that. But next, we want to talk about the Miami Hurricanes because that was the biggest victory of Mario Cristobal's tenure so far in Miami, and eye-opening in a lot of ways when you look at the talent that Miami's collected and you look at the way they beat Notre Dame at things Notre Dame was beating everybody with past couple of years in the Marcus Freeman era. You want to keep it locked right here. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Donno with you on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. I ran into some Miami fans at Hard Rock Stadium the other night, and they told me they got their tickets to Miami versus Notre Dame on Game Time. They love the features. They love the prices. And, guys, we all love college football, the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. Nobody likes that. That's why we use Game Time. Guys, Game Time has been such a blessing. The app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I love the panoramic view you can get from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Download Game Time today. Thank you for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen. Hey, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes, and thanks for helping us out. All right, so we go from Florida State's 31-17 win against against Alabama I'm jumping ahead here, to Miami's 27-24 win against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And Kenton, the first thing that jumps out to me is, because obviously I've spent a lot of time thinking about this game, hosting Locked On Canes as well, the fact that Miami was able to hold Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price to a combined 78 rushing yards. They held Love to 33 rushing yards, and Miami actually outrushed Notre Dame 119-93 in yardage. Miami won the line of scrimmage battles on both sides. Ruben Bain had himself a freaking game, an interception, a game-sealing sack at the end of it. Miami's offensive line did a phenomenal job. Carson Beck was only sacked once, while Miami's D-line sacked C.J. Carr 3 times. And then the other part of it, Kenton, when I talk about Miami winning the game in ways Notre Dame usually wins, the Fighting Irish last year were plus 18 in turnover margin. Elite. Miami wins the turnover battle plus 2 in this one. Wasn't perfect for Miami. They were letting Notre Dame back into it in the fourth quarter, got very conservative on offense, but they're able to close it out on defense, Miami, which is something that never happened last year. So, I mean, I couldn't be happier about that win, and huge test to start the season that Miami passes early on.
In what world, I don't care what university, what program you are, nobody can be disappointed about a top 10 win week 1. Let's start there. But like you said, the way in which they won it. There was a point during that game where the announcer said, Jeremiah Love finally out of the witness protection program. I beg your pardon? I beg your finest pardon, but he was correct, because at that point, Jeremiah Love was under wraps. The run fits were there. And this is the biggest thing for me that I look at and I say, man, this is a great win for Miami on every level. Obviously, you have the aspect of it being a top 10 win, but it's what you said. It's the way the game was won. This game was not won because Carson Beck went out there and went legend, put on a performance like nobody's seen, dropped 450 on him, and he was just laying it right on the money everywhere. This game was won by the defense. Ruben Hurricane Bain, he sounded like Bain during that game. He had to be asking Carr, which will break first, your body or your spirit? Because he was all over the place. The young man did everything you could ask of a superstar to do and more. And when you talk about these top 10 matchups, there is one thing that remains a constant in college football, at least. Your stars have to be your stars. Amen. They have to star. And guess whose stars showed up at the highest clip? Miami's. Guess whose stars were in the witness protection program? He was changed his name. It's Darian Haight, actually. There's no love in my name, sir. I don't know who you're referring to. But because Miami defenders were everywhere they needed to be. That was a masterclass defensively. When you talk about stopping the run, it's about two things: effort and assignment. And those two things Miami gave at a higher clip than I think I saw from any other team this weekend. So hats off to Miami.
You know, and like you said, it obviously was not a game where Carson Beck lit it up, but he accomplished every objective that I had for him pregame, Kenton, because I knew, I mean, Notre Dame has like 4 guys in their defensive secondary who are going to be playing on Sundays within the next couple of years. Like I was not expecting Beck to, you know, have like Cam Ward versus Louisville type of stats last year. But I thought if he can make good decisions, if he can take care of the football and hit a couple of big passing plays, that could be enough in a game like that. And obviously it was enough because of the way Miami ran the football, the way the defense played. But I thought, you know, considering the defense he was going up against, I thought Beck looked fantastic. I mean, he was able to find repeatedly true freshman receiver Malachi Toney. And I was saying this for the last, 24 hours, Kenton, that I think Toney could have the type of impact that like Casey Concepcion had his first year at NC State as a freshman. I think Malachi Toney has that sort of year one potential. He led Miami with 82 receiving yards and a touchdown. And then that ridiculous catch that CJ Daniels, who's a 6-year senior, made, the one-handed grab in the end zone. And it's funny because that was like the one throw that Beck made that could have gone for a turnover. Like there were no other turnover-worthy plays because if Daniels didn't get a paw on that, Aiden Schuler, was there probably to pick it off. But that was an unbelievable play by CJ Daniels. So I thought Beck, again, this was probably not the biggest stat line he's going to have this year, taking care of the football, making good decisions, standing in the pocket to make some big throws. I thought that was a really good game from him.
Donno, maybe I quoted the wrong Beatles song. I said it was All You Need Is Love, but apparently it's I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends, because I saw a exhibition by Beck. He was good, but his receiving core, those pass catchers, if somebody would have told me, hey, there's going to be a guy named Malachi that has his fingerprints all over this game, I would say, oh, yeah, Malachi Fields is for sure going to win this game for Notre Dame, man.
Right.
Good for them. LOL, wrong Malachi. Ha! Good thought, but that's wrong. Oh, there's going to be a player in somebody's wide receiving core that comes up with a massive, freakish, acrobatic catch to stop a darn near surefire turnover and score a touchdown. Oh man, I wonder, is it going to be Greathouse? Is it going? Who's it going to be? And you have these Miami guys stepping up. Again, hats off to Miami. This was not a game that anybody could say. The Alabama game, you could have your arguments for. Alabama just pissed down their leg, and they just showed up terribly. Caden Proctor played terrible. All these guys played terrible, all that. You can't say that this Notre Dame team played a terrible game. They did. They did what they do to the best of their ability. Miami was just better at it. That's just what it was. You watch that game, they were just better at it. And so you look at that and you say, well, how can you take away credit for Miami, even if you were a hater? You know what I mean? And there's nothing you could say here. Again, top 10 win, a team that loves to run the ball, and you said, all right, cool, we'll stack the box. If you can throw it on us, you'll be fine. Looks like they were not fine. They were very unfine. This was just a pure display of mastery of coaching up until the fourth quarter from Cristobal and his staff. Now, I don't know what happened in the fourth quarter where they did their best Dave Doran impression. Where the hay's in the barn, boys. The game's over. We're good here. Enough of that. The ACC team's got to learn. When you got a team on the ropes, put your foot on that neck. Don't let up. But other than that, they, again, coached a phenomenal game.
And the other thing I'll say about it, because I don't want to not mention this guy, but Carter Davis, Miami's kicker, Kent, I had my concerns, and maybe I still do. It's one game, but heading into the season, Miami for the past 5 years have had Borregales brothers. The family ran out of children, unfortunately. Never had to worry about Miami's kicking game. There were some reports about things, being a little inconsistent in practice. In fact, Miami's first field goal attempt against Notre Dame, Carter Davis didn't even get a chance to kick it because it was a bad snap, and then the punter. Felt bad for him because for a hot second, Dylan Joyce, the punter, looked like he was looking downfield. I can throw for this first down. Nobody was open. So he just had to kind of run out of bounds and avoid getting killed. And then, when Davis, his first couple of extra point tries looked a little shaky. So when he lined up for a big 38-yarder in the fourth quarter, I was nervous. He drilled it. And then he gets the opportunity from 47 yards for what turned out to be the game winner. I couldn't even look at it, Kenton. I had to look away and just say a Hail Mary, and he was able to come up with that 47-yarder. So kudos to him, because he was he came from FAU, and he was, I think, below 50% career percentage on field goals. So I don't know what sort of clinics he's been attending for the past year, but Carter Davis had himself a game in the clutch.
Wow. Some kickers in the ACC had good games. Well, we know nothing about that in Raleigh. We have no clue what that looks like here. I'm sorry. We're not on that game yet. Shout out to that young man. That is, again, game-winning field goal. Like you said, this is a big-time performance by Miami, top to bottom. This is a full team win. Everybody needs to celebrate this win. And, of course, you got another game coming up. 24 hours, celebrate it, ball it up, throw it in the trash, get ready for the next one. But I would say have yourself a day, have yourself a time, because that was a spectacular performance by Miami and a gutsy performance to pull this out, against a national champion runner-up that's coming into your crib when your coach is known for blowing big games. When you look at this game and you say to yourself, well, we had a massive lead and somehow we kind of let that massive lead slip away late, and you still find a way to do it, you've got to give that team their respect.
When we come back, we got to talk about Clemson. And listen, they lost their first game last year, went on to an ACC championship, college football playoff. So I don't want to overreact, but I was expecting something different in their Death Valley than what we got. We'll also run through the other games, including Kenton's NC State Wolfpack getting a big victory on Thursday night. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiette Ready. Rugiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love it. It's completely online. Rugiette connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to rugiette.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get 15% off today. That's rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiette website for full safety information. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. Hey, it's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts like Kenton and myself. A college football preview on Locked On is the one only we can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. All right, so Kenton, Clemson falls 17-0 against LSU, giving LSU their first season opening victory in 6 years, and Clemson now they're 0-4 in their last 4 games against SEC opposition. They fell to Texas in the playoff last year, where Cade Klubnick did have a good game against Texas. It was really the defense that let him down in that one, but he didn't play great in a loss to South Carolina last year. Didn't play well at all to open up the season against Georgia last year, and he didn't play so well on Saturday night. Kenton, Cade Klubnick goes 19 for 38, 230 yards, no touchdown, 1 interception. And I expected Clemson to have more control of the line of scrimmage. We probably didn't give LSU's offensive line enough credit because they made Clemson, who, we argued before the season, best defensive line in the country, They did not look it on Saturday in that 17-10 loss.
Us ACC teams need to stop saying best defensive line in the country. I think that's the problem. We did it last year with Florida State.
Last year.
Yeah. We did it this year with Clemson. I think we just need to stop that. But in the same way that I said Carson Beck got by with help from his friends, this brings up the Houdini song Friends, because I want to ask how many of us have them watching how the guys around Cade Klubnick perform. I watched that game from start to finish, and Cade Klubnick was not perfect. And I hate this because y'all got me making excuses for a quarterback out here. Y'all got me really defending a quarterback. But
he's no Carson Beck.
Game, all right now. But watching that game, I sit here and say Antonio Williams is out early. No catches on the night. No stats registered for Antonio. And then the wide receivers that were out, how much more do you want Cade to do? He drops a perfect over-the-shoulder pass to Wesco late, and he just drops it.
Yeah.
And that's one play. There are multiple plays where I saw the interception, 100% on him, right? Even if I was to say, oh, he had pressure in his face, whatever. No. I'll give him that interception. He has to own that. But how many plays did you see, Donno, where you're like, hey, what more do you want your quarterback to do?
Yeah,
he can't walk up to you and hand you the ball and say, hey, here you go, man. He can't do it. This against the rules, and LSU's defense will have something to say about that. I was thoroughly disappointed with the supporting cast, and I am normally one that comes down hard on quarterbacks because I think they get way too much credit when they, don't do much of anything. But this is a moment where I think too much blame is going on Klubnick, and everybody said, oh, I'm out on Klubnick. I am telling you right now, if you take away most quarterbacks, best receiver who they built a great rapport with last year, and then the guys around him, not only is he getting it there and they're dropping it, but even beyond that, there was no running game to speak of.
Yeah, which we kind of expected, right?
Which we expected, but we expected the passing game to offset that because we expected Williams and company to be one of the best wide receiver cores in the company. Instead, they were doing more drops than speaker knockers back in 2012. If you know, you know. So it was just a very disappointing moment for me to see what they did there. But again, credit to LSU. They dominated on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Point blank period. Point blank period. Peter Woods looked good. Parker, not so much. There were flashes.
Nope.
But there wasn't – he didn't play a full, complete game there. And that line core as well, I mean, a little bit underwhelming. I will say it was, to me, this game cannot be put solely on the shoulders of Cade Klubnick, but I know it will be. And I've seen it has been so far, which I think is a little unfair to him because nobody on Clemson – I think the only guy that can walk out of that game and say, I made myself money. I did a good job out there. It's Peter Woods. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. He was a menace. He was doing what he had to do in the middle. Everybody else, take a long look in the mirror and ask yourself what type of season you want to have.
Now, I think about something that I said a few weeks ago on an ACC squad episode. You may have not been there for this particular one, Kenton, but just thinking about I don't think my pick has changed. Like I could still see Clemson obviously getting to the ACC championship game, winning the conference potentially, but it's like performances in games like this out of conference are why I'm not ready to buy Clemson as a true national championship contender, right? Like I look at Ohio State, which I still don't understand why they were underdogs against Tech. I didn't understand it heading into the game. I certainly don't understand it coming out of the game. To me, that's still the team. That's still the team to beat. And a lot of folks are like, "Oh, this is Clemson's year to win the title." Like winning the ACC again, maybe, but I don't know. This certainly didn't help my opinion that Clemson to me is a team that can get into the playoff again, maybe win a playoff game, but they're not getting all the way.
I had said all offseason that I think that Clemson is fantastic. I think that they're a national championship team and all that. But if somebody would have asked me what I thought the most overrated group on that team was, I would have definitely said the offensive line. Because I think that they're all right. I think they're good. I don't think they're like road graders that's like, this is impossible to overcome. There is nothing you can do. I would say that group is by far the one that I'm like, y'all having a bunch of all-conference guys on that line? Hold on. what are we saying about us as a conference? Which, in hindsight, I see what you were saying there, Donno. With they shouldn't have had that many guys on all conference team. But I will say this: it is just one game, and of all the first games, I would say they had the most reason for me to say this was the exception, not the rule, of any other team who lost in week one. This was a game where, again, I saw a team that went out there and had their star receiver gone like that. I saw a team that we all knew the running game was going to be a work in progress and they were going to need to rely heavily on the passing game to do so, and they could not. I saw a team defensively, as much as some people want to say, like, oh, their defense, they didn't do great and the D-line wasn't great. You allowed 17 points. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
It's true.
Most other games, if either Notre Dame or Miami had allowed the other team to score 17 points, they win. They win, period. In almost any game around the country, if you hold a team to 17 points, you win that football game. And somehow, one of the most electrifying offenses in America, you hold them to 17 and you still walk out of Death Valley as losers. Offensively, they've got a lot to figure out. Garrett Riley is a guy that already people were looking at early in the season last year and 2 years ago saying, how good of a fit is he? Those questions are going to come back now, but if Clemson can do what they did last year and basically run the table through the ACC, they'll have those questions answered until the playoffs get here.
Yeah, and let's not forget, like week one last year against Georgia, their offense looked completely non-existent, and that did not define who Clemson was for the rest of the season. So maybe the same thing plays out this year. Now, a team that did not hold their opponent to 17 points were the Syracuse Orange. They've got a big problem on defense, Kenton. And listen, I know that Tennessee, might have one of the better. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because Syracuse's schedule is ridiculous. So they're going to face other big time offenses this year. The Volunteers, with Joey Aguilar at quarterback after the Nico musical chairs with UCLA, Tennessee puts up 45 against Syracuse, 45-26. Now the good news is Syracuse's offense looked pretty good despite all the changes. Steve Angeli at quarterback. Trevor Pena's not walking through that door. The offense looked okay, but that defense, Kenton, looks like it's going to be a problem for Cuse. And with how tough that schedule is, you're talking about fighting for bowl eligibility this year.
I'm so confused as to how a former defensive backs coach has had back-to-back teams that cannot stop a runny nose with Robitussin tissue and like 8 COVID shots back to back to back. I don't get it. I want to understand it. I want somebody to explain this to me like I'm a 5th grader, because we saw it all last year. The Achilles heel for Syracuse was the defense. Other than one game against Pitt, the Achilles heel for that team all along, defense. Hey, we need the defense to show up. And yet again, we're a year later and we're asking those same questions of the defense. At this point, something's got to change. Somebody's got to go. Something has to get better, because I don't want to overreact and panic from week one. But if they don't get this corrected, if I'm Fran Brown, how do you bring a defensive coordinator back after this?
By the way, you tried to talk me into Syracuse covering the spread. I didn't bite. I'm proud to say I did not bite.
I don't know who said the wrong team was favored there. I don't know who said that. Hey, don't look at me. I'm ugly. Okay, that was an old-fashioned whooping.
Hey, listen, I did have money on Bama minus 13.5, so I didn't make all great decisions over the weekend. We could say that. Okay, so a couple other things that stood out to me. Georgia Tech, as we both expected, they pull out the victory on the road against Colorado. Line of scrimmage and rushing, Georgia Tech ran for 320 yards at Colorado en route to the victory. And Haynes King was their leading rusher. He looked really good on the ground in that game. So I want to hear your take on that, Ken. And I want to hear your take on your NC State Wolfpack, who on Thursday night got the revenge against ECU in that rematch from the bowl game last year. So what were your takeaways on those games?
I'll start from the thing I want to talk about least to the most. Dave Doeren is still Dave Doeren, okay? You jump out to a 17-point lead, 17-0, and then all of a sudden, with about 2 minutes left, Donno, 2 minutes left, you see that your defense is struggling to switch personnel. The offense is over the ball, about to snap it. You are just near 2 minutes left, Donno. You have 2 timeouts left. What would you do as a head coach, Donno? What would you do in that situation?
The opposite of what Dave Doeren was thinking.
Oh, okay. Because let the play run when that team had negative yards to that point. They had negative yards. If you just would have said, whoa, timeout. What were you saving the timeout for? You don't get extra points for having timeouts left going into the half. You are just over 2 minutes left. Call that timeout, give yourself a chance to regroup and go from there. But other than that, we saw an offense that looked much more explosive, much more high octane, a ton of shots taken early until we decided late, we got a lead. Let's just run. On 7 straight first downs, Donald, they ran different variations of inside zone. I said, hey, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of it. So what that you're winning? Winning is not permanent until you have won. The hay is not in the barn. There's still time left on that clock up there. So there's that. And now, Georgia Tech and Colorado. Is that surprising? Is anybody shocked?
Drake told maybe. I don't know.
Remember, we specifically said Georgia Tech's going to win that game, and we said they're going to out-physical them at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. If of all the games that were played this weekend, if anybody said you have to pick one team that's going to rush for 300 yards against their opponent, I think you and me both would have said, slam it on Georgia Tech.
Yes.
What? Coach Key up against that Colorado team, with all due respect, again, big Warren Sapp guy. I know you're a Miami guy. You're a big Warren Sapp guy. We all knew that defensive line, they were not prepared for what Georgia Tech was bringing. So, no shock at all seeing what Georgia Tech did.
Well, and last year they had 2 Miami guys coaching their defensive line, with Damian Lewis was their main D-line coach, and he's at Miami now. So, Warren Sapp no longer has the tag team with D. Lou, which may have something to do with that as well. But yeah, I mean, folks, big result. Let's go over the results. By the way, we are recording this during the Bill Belichick debut, so we'll break this down more tomorrow. As we are having this conversation, TCU is up 17-7 at halftime over North Carolina. You had NC State 24-17 over East Carolina, Duke 45-17 over Elon. Elon gets the big cover, but they lose big, but they do cover that spread. You're welcome for that free tip. I have to go back and watch this one. The highlight reel shouldn't be too long. Wake Forest over Kennesaw State, 10-9. Georgia Tech, as we mentioned, 27-20 over Colorado. 9th-ranked LSU beat 4th-ranked Clemson in Clemson's Death Valley, 17-10. Florida State, huge win for them at home against 8th-ranked Alabama, 31-17. Seminoles, 16th-ranked SMU took care of East Texas A&M, 42-13. 24th-ranked Tennessee over Syracuse, 45-26 in Atlanta. Pittsburgh, 61-9 against Duquesne. Boston College, Lonergan's debut for them at quarterback, 66-10 over Fordham. Louisville, 51-17 over Eastern Kentucky. Virginia, 48-7 against Coastal Carolina. Cal, 34-15 over Oregon State. Miami, number 10 over number 6 Notre Dame, 27-24. And this is one I want to dive into a little bit more later in the week. 13th ranked South Carolina, 24-11 against Virginia Tech. Not nearly enough drones strikes in that one. I will say Virginia Tech hung tough until the fourth quarter, but we'll get into that more throughout the week. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. Check him out there and at TGIF_Kenton on X. I am Alex Donno, Locked On Canes, and at Alex Donno on X. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.